We are in chambers with Justice Sherr on our extended interview. Justice Sherr, you were mentioning in our television broadcast that it was very important that people get lawyers and that they disclose all of their income and assets. What happens to people who try to do these agreements on their own, don't disclose all of the money they have, all of their investments, their RRSPs, their pensions, everything, and then it comes before you in court?
Well, if it comes before me in court, the fact that they haven't disclosed their assets is going to be an important factor in deciding whether or not I'm going to uphold that agreement or not. I still have to look at the agreement and see if it's fair and whether it meets the principles of our law. But if it doesn't, and if that agreement's not fair and they haven't disclosed their financial information, well, there's a very good chance that's going to be set aside and it's going to cost them a lot of money.
And I think people need to know that they may think they're saving money by doing some kind of kitchen table agreement, and they're not being honest with each other about what they've got. And then a few years later, they're in court when they should have moved on with their lives. They're in court arguing over whether that agreement is valid. It would have been so much easier and less stressful and less expensive to go to a lawyer, be honest about what you have. I want to also ask you about income. Many people, especially self-employed people, it's complicated for them to calculate what their true income is because of income tax write-offs that might not be considered in family court. Can you just talk a little bit about income attribution and what that means?
Well, assessing somebody's income is a very important part of spousal support because we calculate the spousal support payment based on the respective incomes. So when you have someone who's self-employed and they're saying that they earn $6,000 a year and live in a $500,000 home, well,
and they drive a fancy car.
Exactly. We weren't born yesterday, so we know that's not the case. But the trick is to try to assess what is the actual income for spousal support purposes, and that's what's called income attribution. So we're going to look at a whole number of factors to decide what is the real income that this person's earning. So we're going to look at their lifestyle. We're going to look at their bank statements. We're going to look at their credit card statements. We're going to see how much money they spent to try and ascertain what is the proper income to attribute to them. And if you try and cheat, and we have a range of what to order, it's likely going to be on the higher end of the range because you weren't playing fair in the first place. So it's probably going to come back and bite you. It's a really bad idea to do it.
So it seems to me, and we should point out that this is true for child support too.
Absolutely.
Anytime the court has to assess what is this person's income, you have to be honest. You've got to show truthfully. People come to court and say, well, I'm being supported by my new partner or my parents, or I'm working for the family business, but the salary doesn't seem to reflect the kind of pay that they should be getting. I remember one I had, it was a contractor. His new girlfriend was a nurse, but he claimed that she owned and ran the contracting business and that he was just an employee making minimum wage. Those are the kinds of things that I think people are just setting themselves up to have a very unpleasant court experience unnecessarily.
And the other difficulty with that, of course, is they're going to be paying not only their lawyers to fight over that case when there shouldn't be a fight over their income in the first place, but if the judge finds that they have been unreasonable, we can order them to pay the other side's costs as well. It can be a very expensive exercise to engage in that type of behavior. So
far, our really important points are you should get a lawyer, you should be upfront and honest about what you have, what you earn, what assets you have.
Play fair.
Your agreement should be fair. If you've been supporting this person for a length of time and you know that they don't have what they need to be able to manage on their own for at least for a while until they get on their feet, be fair about what you're giving them. And I think another thing I should ask you about is a change in circumstances. What if you remarry? What if the person you're paying the spousal support to gets a new partner? And what if you get sick? You know, what if you retire? Life changes. Life does change. And what the law says is if there is a material change in circumstances, you can revisit the spousal support award. And a material change means something significant. It doesn't mean that if you're earning $55,000 and your income goes down to $50,000, that's not a material change. But sometimes people do get sick,
And if you've gone from $55,000 and your company's laid you off and you can't find another job and you're receiving employment insurance of $15,000, $16,000 a year, that's a material change, and we're going to change the order in that type of circumstance.
What about people that decide that they'd like to take early retirement or maybe go back to school and reinvent themselves in some esoteric way when they've got this obligation to support their family?
We have to look and see what's reasonable, and what you described probably isn't very reasonable. So
but we see it a lot.
We see it an awful lot. People say, well, I've decided at Freedom 55, I'm going to retire at 55 because I don't want my spouse to receive spousal support. It's not going to work. We have to look at what's reasonable.
We have to let people know that those kinds of things don't work. I had one not long ago. The guy was an engineer making a lot of money, and he decided to become a gentleman farmer, he and his new partner, in complete disregarding the obligation that they've got. And that's not a change in circumstances, is it?
That wouldn't be a change in circumstances. And you mentioned something interesting. What about second families?
Yes.
And those cases are actually very difficult because we have to recognize realities. People do move on with their lives. They have other child support obligations as well. It's still going to be difficult to change the spousal support award, but in certain circumstances that will be relevant in assessing whether we should be adjusting the spousal support or not. We have to be realistic.
Well, Justice Sherr, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to give us your insights. I think this is a really important area of law that isn't really that complicated if people use their common sense and they're fair. And I hope that everybody watching this interview will tell everyone they know who might be facing a claim for spousal support or is making a claim to watch this and understand what they need to know so that they can go through this a lot easier than if they didn't act fairly. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me here.